Welcome to the Environmental Justice Lab. I am your host, Dr. Leslie Joseph. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for listening. We have been and we will continue to talk about Palestine on this episode. Palestine's going through a lot. If you watch the news, if you keep track of what's going on with the war, with the casualties, with the humanitarian crisis, with the famine, all the destruction that's taking place, Gaza is going through a lot. The West Bank, there's increased violence there. And on this podcast, we've been talking about the environmental issues that have been going on, the environmental injustice that's been taking place. And so I just want to take some time out on this episode to encourage you to educate yourselves and to advocate on behalf of the Occupied Palestinian Territories. It's a shame. It really is a shame that we can live in a world where people cannot get what they need when they need it. It really is a shame. And for so long, the Palestinian people have been struggling. For so long, they've been struggling to get basic necessities, basic needs met: water, food, health care, a place to use the restroom, sanitation facilities. It's just awful. And so I know that there are lots of places in the world where that's the case, but this is probably one of the few parts of the world where the issue isn't simply a lack of resources. It's not simply that they live in an area that's deserted or that's devoid of resources. The truth is the political instability, the constant hostility, the different ways in which the governing authorities who occupy and manage and maintain the occupied Palestinian territories have consistently sought to restrict the food and the needs from the people that live there. It is awful, and it is something that we need to actually pay attention to. We have to pay attention to it. We can't look away. We can't pretend like it's not there. And we can't act as though it's their problem. It's all of our problems. We have to do something. We have to say something. We have to lift our voices, make them heard, because they don't have a voice, right? They're not recognized as a state. They don't have representation that can be vocal about their situation when they go to the UN, when they go to these international organizations. They don't have any of that. And so we need to make sure that we're doing what we can, wherever we are, to speak up and to speak out when we see injustice, no matter where it is, and no matter who's experiencing it, and no matter who is the one inflicting it. We have to speak out. And this is something that everybody would benefit from. Everyone, no matter what side you say you're on, everybody benefits when there's justice. And everybody benefits when there is equity and fairness. Everybody benefits. Because the hostilities, the violence, the killing, the destruction ultimately comes from a place where people are experiencing long-standing, deep injustice in their communities, in their territories. That's what's underpinning all of this. And so for us, as we fight for justice, we know that when you have a just society, when you have people who are treated equitably, peace can come. And peace can be had because everyone knows they have a voice. Everyone knows they have a way of determining what their future looks like, and a recognition that every single person matters. That will bring about peace and security. And so if you would call yourself a pro-Palestinian activist or advocate, that's what you want. You want justice. You want fairness. You want equal representation. You want all of those things, and you want it yesterday. You've wanted it for a long time. If you would call yourself more of a pro-Israeli, pro-Israel government type of advocate or activist, well, how much violence has been going on since Israel was founded in 1948? How much? How much war has been taking place? You don't want war. Nobody wants war. People want peace. We want security. You want to be able to go where you want to go without fear. And so bringing justice, bringing fairness and equity to this region will bring peace as well. And so that's what you want. We want peace. We don't want any more people to die anywhere in this region. In Israel, in the West Bank, in Gaza, we don't want anyone else to die. We don't want anyone else to experience this kind of brutal domination from anywhere. And so we have to speak up and ensure that people understand that peace and justice go together. You can't have one without the other. There won't be any peace when there's injustice reigning where you live, no matter where you live. And without the justice, peace won't be available. People will continue to oppose injustice. That's just what happens. And we've had our episodes. If you want to go back and listen, you can listen to how we talk about water, how we talk about food, this ecocide is happening during this war, how decisions are made and how people's lives are governed by people who they did not elect, who they did not send to represent them, making decisions on how their lives go. That is a problem. These are all injustices, and we have to make sure that when we speak up and we speak out, that we're consistent and that we're clear about what needs to happen. And what needs to happen is that we need justice in the region. Everybody to be treated equally and fairly. Everyone to have the same access to resources and a future. We need all of those things. And the environment. This is the Environmental Justice Lab podcast. You know the environment is the foundation for everything. You can't live without water. You can't live without a sanitation facility. You can't live without food. You can't live without clean air. You can't do any of those things. You can't live without a place to live in. If your house has been destroyed and your businesses are destroyed and your school is destroyed and the roads are destroyed and the bridges are destroyed and everything's destroyed, you can't live like that. You just can't. And so we need to make sure that we're clear about the fact that justice needs to be the order of the day. And so right now, there's a war going on. We need a ceasefire. We need a ceasefire. We need all of the bombing, all of the shooting, all of the attacks to stop now. Too many civilians are dying. Too many children are being killed. Too many women are getting killed. There's just too much death to think that we should continue this way. No matter what side you're on, it doesn't matter. Because civilians don't have anything to do with what's going on. And they're the ones being killed, and they're the ones who are displaced, and they're the ones who are struggling and starving in the streets. It's them. So we need to stop. We need to release the hostages. They didn't do anything. They're not a part of this. They're not even a part of the conflict. They were just at a music festival trying to enjoy themselves, and you went and you kidnapped them and held them hostage. We need to release them. Go back to their families. Go back home. They've been away from home for almost a year now. It's time for them to go back. Release the hostages. Ceasefire. And that's just the beginning. We need to let humanitarian aid into the region. You can't keep stopping these big buses and all these trucks and everybody coming in trying to help, trying to at least soften the destruction, and you're not allowing it to come in. You can't do that either. That's unacceptable. Right now, they're saying, by they, I mean USAID, that's the United States Agency for International Development, the World Food Program, they're saying it's a famine. There's a famine in Gaza right now. And there's a famine because all of the food aid that they relied on is being blocked all around by Israeli forces. Now, there's a lot of speculation as to why they're blocking it. If you ask them, they would say that there are things on those food aid trucks that could be used as weapons. So we don't want to let anything in because we don't want them to be fighting us with what's on those trucks. Fine. Then you bring some aid. You bring in some food. You bring in some medicine that you know they won't fight you with. You do it. If you don't want them to do it, that's fine. You do it. Somebody needs to do it, though. There's a war, and there's humanitarian rules that go along with war. And one of them is you can't starve everybody to death. You can't do that. You can't allow this type of environment to exist as you conduct your military operation. And so you just stop. Get a deal to get the hostages back. Do whatever exchange you need to make to get the hostages back. That was your main priority. Get them back. Stop the fighting. Let the Israeli government leadership and the leaders of the Palestinian people and the mediators get into a room and figure this out. Because this is enough. It's too much. We can't continue to have this. And we can't continue to trick ourselves into thinking that at some point we'll just stop and everything will be fine. We can't do that. So I'm just here just saying one thing and one thing only. Advocate. Stand up. I know it's difficult. I know it's hard. I know that this is the kind of issue that can really derail your career aspirations or your relationships. It's a very intense, very emotional type of discussion because we can't forget the reality that the Jewish people have been and continue to be discriminated against, marginalized, and they have been for their whole existence. And the Holocaust was probably the single worst event to occur to a people group in the history of the world. Probably. I don't know my history that well. It's at least top 3. It's really bad. Millions and millions of Jewish people were murdered. And so there's a sensitivity to the way that they respond when they're attacked. I completely understand it. And they need to defend themselves. They need to be able to exist in the world. But so do Palestinians. The Palestinian people were already there. They have to be treated fairly and equally, and they have to have an equal opportunity to determine the trajectory of their lives in their towns and cities, wherever they live. We need both. And so don't get trapped into the idea you have to pick a side and support whatever the side does whenever they do it. You don't have to. You don't have to side with Hamas because you want Palestinian self-determination and that's what they did, so you have to agree with what they're doing. You don't have to do that. We're talking about justice here. You don't have to agree that the whole Gaza Strip can be demolished and destroyed indiscriminately because you want Jewish people to be safe. You don't have to do that. There are other ways. And there's organizations that are fighting for the other way. There's Jewish Voices for Peace. There's all kinds of groups that want peace, that want security, that want what everybody wants. A way to live in peace and harmony. And so let's stand up and let's speak. Use your voice, use your platforms, use your influence with your neighbors and your friends and your churches, wherever you go. And advocate for peace and justice, both of them. Not just the kind of peace that just goes back to what we had before, but justice that sees people as who they are and recognizes their humanity and allows them to flourish and to be what they've been created to be. We need that. And we need people who are courageous, people who believe that justice should be afforded to everyone, people who believe that justice is the path to peace. That's what we need to do. And so I'm excited because even though everything's going on right now, I know that more and more people are recognizing and seeing and understanding and learning about the issues going on with Israel and Palestine, and people are actually paying attention now, and people are actually speaking and sharing their perspectives on every side. And the conversation and the energy behind it, I think, will lead to lots of good changes and lots of good progress. And so I know that we're going to get there, but we have to stop with the fighting, because every day the bombing continues, hundreds and hundreds of more civilians die, and they don't come back. They don't return. These babies, these children are going to be scarred for life if they survive. The mental anguish is going to live with them forever. We have to stop it. And we have to stop it now. We need a ceasefire now. And then we can talk about what's next and how to bring justice. We need a ceasefire. We need to stop the fighting. That's what we have to do. And that's it. That's the show for today. Thank you so much for listening to the Environmental Justice Lab, where we are for the people and for the planet. See you next time.